So you want to play BELUNA GRANDSQUALL, a 3-mana giant noble with trample that makes all of your permanents cost less as long as they have an adventure attached to them. So before we do anything, I'm actually going to show you one important card and a little bit of an important feature to remember. Lucky Clover. Now it's important to understand that the adventure is only the instant or sorcery that's on the card, not the entire card. So whenever a card mentions an adventure, they only mean the instant or sorcery. But with that out of the way, let's get right into deck building. In the early game, you're going to want cards like Edgewall Innkeeper, a 1-drop that draws you a card whenever you cast a creature that has an adventure. Getting this out early will draw you a lot of cards throughout the game. It's very handy. Next, you're going to want Goblin Electromancer. Making all of your instants and sorceries cost 1 less is very important because every adventure is an instant or sorcery. And of course, you're going to want cards like Bramble Familiar, who can come out early or be returned to your hand for their bigger effect later in the game. Fetch Quest allows you to mill 7 cards and then put a creature, enchantment, or land from among them onto the battlefield. In the mid game, it's time to start speeding things up. We're going to want Storyteller Pixie, which allows us to draw a card whenever we cast any adventure spell. Paired with Edgewall Innkeeper, we're going to be drawing a lot of cards throughout the game. Next, we're going to want Elusive Otter. By itself, it's just a hard to block 1/1 with prowess, but its adventure allows you to distribute +1/+1 counters among creatures you control, making them a lot bigger and a lot more damage dealing. And last but not least, we've got Bright Cat Badger, whose adventure makes you 2 Saproling tokens and who itself makes more Saprolings and makes them tap for mana. This will come in handy to help you cast bigger creatures and bigger adventures later in the game. Now, of course, in the late game, we're going to want hard hitters like Beanstalk Giant, who gives power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control, and who has an adventure to allow you to search for a land and put it onto the battlefield. This guy will just be hanging out in exile for a while until you need him, so he's always there. When it enters the battlefield, it turns any number of tapped creatures into 2/2 horrors that are face down, effectively removing a ton of problem creatures. Paired with Plant Tadpoles, it can tap down any number of creatures you want and then completely disable them for the rest of the game. And of course, you have cards like Sailor's Bane, which is just a big chunky guy that gets less expensive the more stuff you cast, so you might as well put him in here. Now, of course, you're going to want Lear, Disciple of the Drowned. Having your spells be uncounterable is very good because your opponents have effectively 2 chances to counter your spells. However, the real meat of this card is the second paragraph, giving each instant and sorcery in your graveyard flashback, which allows you to cast adventure cards from your graveyard and then recast the permanent later on. Now, unfortunately, Lear is one of the cards where it does work like that. There are other cards that give flashback that don't quite work like that, so this is a must-have if you can afford it. Last but not least, we're going to want some support. Doc Arlock reduces the casting cost of spells by 2 as long as you're casting from your graveyard or from exile, which is perfect for all the cards you're casting from exile with the adventures. Now, Feshni is an interesting card because it allows you to copy spells you cast from exile, but they do sacrifice themselves at the beginning of the end step. However, having an extra big body with haste is always a good thing. And last but not least, you're going to want cards like Warped Space. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast from exile. And guess where all the adventure cards go after you cast them? Being able to cast free spells from exile is good in any deck, and especially in this one. So, what do you want to play next?